Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Little Africa Bronx News, our Meet the Candidate video interview series. Today, we are speaking with Mr. Kevin Riley, who is running for City Council in District 12, which includes Co-op City, the Valley, Wakefield, and other neighborhoods in the Northeast Bronx. Mr. Riley, thank you so much for joining us today at Little Africa Bronx News. Welcome to our program, and please tell us about yourself.
Well, first and foremost, thank you, Ms. Davis, for allowing me to speak on this platform. I think it's very vital that we have platforms like this to discuss ideologies and different initiatives that we want to bring to our community to make our community a better place. Without further ado, I'm Kevin Christopher Riley. I'm a 32-year-old African-American male that grew up, raised and born in the northeast section of the Bronx. I have two beautiful daughters, Brooke and Kate. I have been for the past 12 years working for Assemblyman Carl Hasty, who is now the Speaker of the New York State Assembly. I graduated from Mount St. Michael Academy in the Wakefield section of the Bronx. I then went on to to college, to SUNY College at Old Westbury to study politics, economics, and law. And then when I started working for Speaker Hasty, I decided to go back and get my master's in public administration, focused on policy and administrating. So a little about myself. I wear a ton of hats. With Speaker Hasty's office, I started out as a graduation specialist, which is an internship position, and gradually grew in the agency to become his community relations director, where I represent him in the community when he's up in Albany. I orchestrate events for him in the community, and I'm really the liaison inside the district. I'm usually a boots on the ground kind of person. I usually pop up in front of your house, kind of address the issue, want to see what's going on. And that's the kind of, work I've been doing outside of Speaker Hasty's office. Another hat I wear is I'm the male district lead in the area, where I'm the liaison between the community and the elected officials, and I'm the individual that controls the poll sites during the election days. We're kind of getting more people in our community to kind of work the poll sites. Another hat I wear is I am a founding member of a nationwide organization which was based out in New York City called the Dad Gang. The Dad Gang is a very big organization. We were featured on all major media outlets. Recently, we were just on the Oprah Winfrey Show. And we basically wanted to make this platform to kind of showcase that Black fathers are very present within their children's lives. We wanted to change this narrative. Because a lot of times now, I'll give a very short story. I was at a work event one time, and I post a lot of pictures of my children on social media. So I saw somebody, I won't say their name, but I saw somebody, and they stated, and she was white. And she stated like, "Oh, you have the same mother for both daughters?" And these are kind of conversations. Yeah. These are kind of like, comments that Black fathers get when we're out with our children. Like, we'll get the looks like, "Wow," or we'll get the looks like, "Oh, I'm glad you stayed." And that's what happened, why we want to kind of showcase and have a visual outlook on Black fatherhood. So we started this platform on social media. We're giving positive imagery of Black fatherhood, and then we kind of blossomed because we were getting messages from a lot of Black fathers that were reaching out to us, a lot of people who wanted to reconnect with their children after years of displacement. So it became kind of a support group after that, and we want to kind of have a stomping ground for positive Black imagery when you think of Black men. Another hat I wear is I just recently started an organization called Music Over Violence, where we kind of want to utilize the voice of music. One thing brings everybody together, no matter what it is. Music will bring everybody together. You understand? So we want to utilize that platform to kind of tie into our youth and our elderly people in our community. So what we do is we utilize the voice of music to de-escalate a lot of violent situations that are going on in our community. We had a big gang bust a few years ago called the Bronx 120, when we had a lot of young kids get arrested for being in the gang, accomplices to a gang, or just being in the wrong direction. They were focused as one unit, as being a part of a gang. So we wanted to kind of utilize this platform. A lot of these kids are into music. A lot of these kids are into music. So we want to utilize this platform to kind of give them a voice so they could address, the issues and trauma that they go through in their life. Because living in communities of poverty, you go through a lot of issues that I think a lot of us don't take into consideration. You're going through a lot of stuff that causes trauma, and it forces people to act out in ways that they normally wouldn't act out if we addressed the situation earlier. Frederick Douglass says it's easier to build a child than repair a broken, adult. I don't want to use the male verb, a broken adult. So we want to basically capture them at a young age. Another hat, I wear a lot of hats. Another hat I wear is I'm also a mentor for President Obama's MBK program, where we kind of help young men of color transition from high school to college. We'll take them under our wings. We usually have four within the Bronx. We have four this year, two from the borough president's office, two from our office, where I mentor them. They kind of follow me, see what I do in the community, and then also I help them with a constructive action plan that they can actually do within their community. So they'll see a need that's needed in the community. So one of my kids this year, he wanted to address the relationship between police and the youth. So he wanted to kind of do an event that will kind of bridge the gap between the police and the youth. And then my other kid, he wanted to address the COVID-19 pandemic because he's from Co-op City. So he saw, essential workers working every day. He wanted to address that, issue. And then they're going on to college. So we want to just become like a mentor type of program for them with the President Obama's MBK program, and the state actually incorporate that program into the DOE initiative. So we're trying to push that initiative to kind of expand it so we could touch other kids around the district. And the last hat, which I recently just gave up, I was a skills coach for a foster agency called New York Foundland. So I worked with foster kids who were in the foster agency, because a lot of times we forget about them. They're forgotten. Foster kids are transitioning from house to house. They're not really in a stable environment. A lot of them were in stable environments because they have been through so much traumatic situations that when you're trying to put them into a house where they have to abide by certain rules, they seem to act out. And then the parent usually, or the guardian usually, doesn't want to deal with it, which causes this youth to bounce from house to house to house. So my job, which I took very proudly, is I was able to teach them life skills that no matter where they bounce from house to house to house, they can still manage to live happily as possible, which they managed to deal with life skills that they possibly need, because you need life skills when you're growing up in the house. A lot of us came from stable households, some of us didn't. But when we realize inside stable households, you realize that your parents will kind of teach you and guide you ways when you're growing to be an adult. But if you're going from house to house to house and you're not really in a stable environment, it becomes way more difficult. And that's about it, I believe.
Well, Kevin, you certainly do wear many hats, but there is a singular theme with all of these hats that you wear, and that is a commitment to the youth and to family and to community. And as that very well-known saying, it takes a village to raise a child. So, I mean, I applaud you and the people that you're working with that are there to help and mentor the youth, and they're giving the support that foster children need as well. But with all of this that you're doing, granted, you are currently already in public service working for Speaker Carl Hastie. It's still, what gave you the, what now has prompted you to take an even bigger leap? And I applaud you taking this leap, because I think it's courageous of anyone to run for public office. But, what made you decide now is the time to run for public office? What is it, or what was it that helped you make this decision to take such a big step and serve their constituents of District 12?
So there's many factors that play into that question. I would start with a very important factor. Usually, you stated a quote that we've been living by in our community for decades. It takes a village to raise a child. Um, I'm 32 years old, and I was born in this community. My first job was in this community for working for the New York Public Library as a page, which is across the street from my job right now for Speaker Hasty's office. So it's kind of funny. But when we raise a child within the community, we always raise a child as saying, listen, you could do so much better. You could grow up to be this person. You could grow up to be the president of the United States. You could grow up to make change. And I used to always hear that about myself, but didn't believe in myself to actually do so. When I actually met Speaker Hasty in 2008. I met him through my fraternity brother. I'm a brother of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. Um, and I met Speaker Hasty through him because it's a networking thing with fraternities. So he introduced me to Speaker Hasty, and I realized that there's actually an avenue and there's a bigger purpose than actually, you know, just helping out people, your neighbors and things of that nature. You can actually set legislation and actually set impactful legislation that can actually push your generation and generations above and below further. And I feel like now, especially my generation as being a millennial, we have a lot of situations and ideologies that don't per se, we don't really see per se in politics today, that I feel like we want to address. And not saying what's going on is terrible. Everyone's doing what they have been portrayed to. But what we're trying to do right now is generational wealth and health is something that we're trying to push right now. And this is why I want to step into politics, because I feel like it's imperative now that we add resources and we implement legislation to kind of benefit against that. And when it takes a village and all these individuals that see me daily of the things that I do, they're kind of pushing me and like, Kevin, you should run for office. You should take these ideologies that you have and kind of step up and go into the legislation platform where you could kind of push legislation and get resources for our communities to actually push that initiative. So when it comes to why I want to do this, is because I feel like the time is now. There's a seat that's going to be vacant in my community, which is the city council seat next year. And I want to throw my hat in the ring. I feel like I have a very transparent personality. I love accountability. I think that's something you have to have as an elected official, is transparency and accountability. And I feel like those characteristics could make me a great elected official, and I want to bring that to the table. When I went to school to get my master's, I did a constructive action plan that was focused on establishing a better relationship between elected officials and constituents. And when I was conducting studies, I had to do quantitative studies and qualitative studies. And when I had to do this, I had to kind of figure out what was the friction between constituents and elected officials. And a lot of them felt that the elected officials weren't transparent to them. And that's why I want to kind of bring to the table now, is trying to be more transparent and make it more cognizant. A lot of people aren't aware of local politicians, especially my peers. My peers aren't aware of their local politician. They're very aware of the national politician. And I feel like I have a platform and I have the knowledge and the marketing skills to kind of get them more aware of those local politicians and let them know that the power that they have to kind of push initiative to obtain the pursuit of happiness within the community.
No, I definitely understand where you're coming from, and I think that's a very important point about young people not really being aware of who their local elected officials are. They may know, they'll know their mayor, they know the governor, and then they'll know the president, and maybe the senator, but they won't know who their assembly person is and who their local, New York State senator is. And that's something that's very key. So I would say definitely, that type of voter education is very important right now with our youth. And considering the upcoming elections, we have, millions of young people turning 18 before election day.
Yep.
And there needs to be a push to get them registered and get out that vote for whoever it is that they vote for. But the other thing that I do want to come back to, and we can do that later on also, is ranked choice voting and educating the community and voters on exactly what ranked choice voting is. Because I think that there really needs to be more education around that, being that it's going to, it's something that will be implemented in 2021, and it will impact every municipal race. So every city council race, borough president race, public advocate race, and comptroller race. So that's something that's very, very important. You mentioned that you have 2 children. Are your children school-age children or younger?
So I have an 18-month-old and I have a 5-year-old.
5-year-old. So is it kindergarten this year? Is this
Kindergarten this year?
Kindergarten. Okay. So, well, welcome. I have a 22-year-old who just graduated from university in May, and I have a 12-year-old. So, welcome.
Congrats.
Welcome. Thank you. Thank you very much. Welcome to the school system. 5 years old. Oh my gosh, kindergarten now. Wonderful age. With everything going on right now, and with your child starting school, with the COVID-19 pandemic that we're dealing with, I'm sure you're aware of Mayor de Blasio and Chancellor Carranza's school reopening plan. And, as a parent and, as a future councilman, what is your position on the school reopening plan? Do you believe that schools should fully reopen? Do you support the blended learning, which is part in-person, part remote? Or do you believe that there should be a delay in the opening and we should begin schools in September fully remote?
So this is a tough question, and I'm gonna speak to it as a parent. When the COVID-19 pandemic happened in March, and I had to pull my daughter out of school, she was 4 years old at the time. She just turned 5 in May. She didn't quite understand what was going on. When kids are that young, they're very active in school, and their development really depends on their interaction with other young kids. And being that they're not in school now, that interaction is being delayed. Do I believe school should reopen in September? No, not at all. I chose to fully go into 100% remote learning because I'm scared. We don't fully understand what's going on with COVID-19 right now. And for us to kind of just utilize our kids as guinea pigs and just kind of open up the school and see what happens, that's very difficult. I'll give you and why I feel like this is, I'll give you an example. This weekend, I took my daughter to a party. And like I said, she hasn't been around kids that much besides family members. So when she sees other kids, she really wants to engage because she misses that. She's a social butterfly. So now we bring her to a party now, and she gets a ring pop, and 2 other girls that she just met at the party get ring pops. I caught them. I turned around for 1 second because my other daughter is running away from me. I turn around and they're like playing taste testers with the ring pops. And I'm like, no, 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 no. So that small situation could kind of tell you what will happen with children, especially my daughter's age, when they go back to school. They're not really fully educated on the COVID-19, and they don't really understand. They're just trying to engage. They're just trying to play. So for that reason alone, I was scared to have my child go back to school. But now when we think about this, the remote learning and going back to school and doing half and half, you also have to think about the parents who have to, go to work. And that's an issue. And that's reasons why I feel like a lot of my peers and a lot of people my age whose children are going back to school, their whole big thing is, listen, I have to go to work, and it's like it's very hard for me to make money and, you know, pay the rent and supply for my child when they're out of school, and I have to be 100% on them doing work. When I was home during the pandemic, all the hats I wore, I had to wear that hat, and I was also an educator now. As you can see behind me, I have my little education board where I teach my daughter daily. So it's challenging. It's very challenging. So my suggestion is, I believe that we should open up the schools in phases, just like how we opened up New York City, so we could kind of, you know, compel on different issues that pop up, and address them quickly and fast. If we send our kids half and half back to school, so I believe not every parent filled out their the online survey. I believe about a quarter of the parents filled it out, so about 250,000 parents filled it out. So that means 700 and plus kids are going to be going back to school in September, and we're not ready. You understand? These classes were already overpopulated to begin with, and now we're going to be jumping back into the school system, and we're not ready. My suggestion is to open up in phases. Also, for the parents who are doing 100% remote learning, let's give them resources to actually help their children out, so they're not delayed. Our schools are failing. Our schools are failing. I live in CEC 11, and we are the best district in the Bronx, but we still have schools that are failing. And you can imagine, after this pandemic, the issues that we're going to have with trying to get our kids back on track with their education. So this has to be a thorough, thought out plan system that we have to do, and we have to be forward thinking. This isn't the first pandemic that has happened, so we need to create a pandemics committee with city council, a committee where we could kind of address situations like this when it comes to education, small businesses, housing, evictions, things that we could kind of discuss in this committee, that if another pandemic presents itself, this won't be the last pandemic. This won't be. And we need to be prepared next time something like this happens. So I think we need to come out in phases right now to kind of discuss any issues that may pop up, and we also need to provide the resources. There was a lot of times that I was home with my daughter, and I'm very resourceful. I love to use Google. I'm a Google bug. I love to Google stuff. I love to educate myself. I study. I love to study. That's just me. So when I was doing this, I was studying what a child at 5 years old should learn. And I tried to go 2 years above, like 7, just to give her, you know, a little, you know, competition gap. So what I was doing now is I do that. But a lot of parents don't go out and do that themselves. So with the DOE, I feel like we should be given more resources, like active planning that we could do with our kids to kind of keep them at the grade level that they're supposed to be at. When it comes to electronics, a lot of our parents don't have electronics for their kids. These things should be start giving out now. Like, we should start handing out these electronics and things of that nature right now, so these parents and the kids could kind of get a hold of how to work these devices right now, and start the process of learning how to jump right back into the education system when we start back in September. So to answer that entire question, I am 100% doing 100% remote learning as a parent. I would suggest a lot of parents to do so, because we don't have a grasp on what's going on right now. And for a parent who has a child who has asthma, and for parents that we live in the asthmatic county, because the asthma in the Bronx is ridiculous measures. That's another conversation when we talk about health. I am scared to allow my child to go back to school, but I do sympathize with parents who have to make an income and don't have child care for their child, which the city should provide breaks for, tax breaks possibly, or any kind of way to kind of help parents out with this expense that they're going to have to get. And maybe even tutors. Like, we're going to have to, I was thinking of hiring a tutor, since I'm doing 100% remote learning. So maybe DOE could provide tutoring services, remote learning also. Maybe my child when we was doing remote learning, I think she had class for like an hour a day. That's not a lot. It's not sufficient for my child. Maybe I need a tutor to talk with my child for 30 minutes with a area that my child needs help with. And these are resources that we need to add when we think about remote learning and this whole pandemic. But we weren't ready, and that's why I feel like we need a committee kind of discuss this matter, so when this thing happens again, or if it does happen again, we'll be ready to address it the best way possible.
No, I agree with you on that, as do many parents. For me, myself, my family, we decided to do full remote learning for my son, for my 12-year-old. A lot of families have decided to do so. I think that with regards to the survey with the Department of Education, a lot of families did not complete the survey. And I think we're going to be very surprised on September 10th when schools reopen, with the number of families doing remote learning. And
think about transportation. Think about how the kids are going to transport the kid to school. Transportation is going to be an issue too. Yeah.
Yes, no, absolutely. It most certainly is. And then also when it comes to the school bus transportation, every single year there are always issues with the Office of Pupil Transportation, with school buses, children not being picked up, children being dropped off at the wrong stops. There's always chaos. But your point about assisting parents who do have to work, who would like to do remote learning because they're concerned for their children's health and safety. Perhaps there's a grandparent in the house, or a family member may have other underlying conditions. The city or the mayor or the Department of Education, I think you're right. They should consider perhaps doing something like childcare vouchers for parents, for all parents, similar, and perhaps similar to what they're doing now with the PEBT, where all children now, it doesn't matter the income, whether you are on public assistance, but if your child is in school and the school does the free lunch, then that family and that child will automatically receive the EBT card, or the pandemic EBT card. I think that is something that parents would appreciate, having some type of child care voucher for those who do need to go to work, so that they can cover the costs of childcare while they are at work. So a child care voucher, is that something that you would support? It would be similar to families who are on public assistance, where public assistance pays for the child care, which is also in a sense I guess a child care voucher, but a child care voucher for all parents who need to work. Is that something that you would support as a city council member for working families?
Most definitely. A child care voucher, and also after school, universal after school. We're trying, you want to limit the amount of, I'm big on financial literacy. And I'm trying to engage everybody into becoming more financially literate. And with doing so, it's kind of difficult when you have expenses where you have to pay for, and it's kind of hurting you from getting to a financial freedom, pretty much. So in order to do so, we have to set resources aside for families that are kind of having an issue with that. Being a parent, getting after school care and paying for after school and paying for child care, it can become unbearing. I'm a person that sometimes I've worked 3 jobs. I just told you I recently quit my other job. I was working 3 jobs at one time, even working with Assemblyman Hasty. And that's not because I had to. I mean, not because I wanted to, it's because I had to. And that takes away from spending time with your kids. That takes away from providing resources that your kids may need. We only think our kids need to go to school. Some of our kids want extracurricular activities. Why can't our kids learn how to swim? Why can't our kids learn how to play a musical instrument? Why can't our kids go to a clinic where they could expand their athletic skills? Like, these are activities. It's not just sending your kids to school. Parents want to be able to afford to provide these things for their children. And if we could give them some form of relief when it comes to childcare and after school, why can't we do so when we can help them? And then that will not only advance our kids in other departments where it comes to public safety, where our kids will be engaged in other activities where they're not idle. And because when our kids are idle, they're doing idle things, which is why, and that's another conversation. I'm pretty sure we're going to speak about public safety, but that's another issue. But when our kids are idle, they're doing idle things. But a lot of our parents can't afford it. I bust my behind to send my daughter to a dance class because I know she likes dancing. But a lot of parents can't afford that. And me and my fiance, we have to bust our behind to be able to afford that and pay the mortgage and be able to apply for our other daughter's childcare needs. So I feel like if we could just give recovery in places where we can help our parents out, like childcare and after school, our kids will be better off.
I 100% agree with you on that, and I'm sure that every parent does. And when it comes to after school programs, some schools, not all schools, but some schools are fortunate enough to have after school programs for some of the students. Not all students who apply to attend the after school programs are able to attend them because of budgetary reasons. The after school programs only able to have a certain amount of students. But when it comes to the Department of Education, as you know, the Department of Education is the city agency with the largest budget. We're talking over $30 billion, billion with a B. And considering that type of budget, when it comes to what trickles down to the schools, we always hear, and we know, I'm in District 11. My daughter went to the Walt Disney School. My daughter went to Equality Charter School right there in Section 5. I mean, she was in that building from K through 8. So,
my niece went there.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
I mean, we see what's going on. And yes, you're right. District 11, District 11 compared to the other districts in the Bronx is the highest performing district. When it comes to the proficiency rates of students, every year, not for 1 year, not for 5 years, not for 10 years, for even longer, the Bronx always has the lowest proficiency rates when it comes to English and math. We know that. And with the Department of Education's $30 billion budget, with our current chancellor's executive superintendents, which is a whole different position that he created recently, with all the bureaucratic bloat that they have, as a city council member, how would you hold the Department of Education accountable with that $30+ billion budget to ensure that that money reaches the classrooms? That money is there for after school programs, extracurricular after school programs in the schools that can take every student whose family applies for the child to attend that after school program. How would you ensure that the money is going to, improving the curriculum, to making sure that our children have iPads and Chromebooks for those children who do not have computers or access to computers at home? how would you hold the Department of Education accountable for the educational outcomes of the students throughout District 12 and throughout the Bronx and throughout New York City? And then how would you ensure that that money is actually going to where it needs to go, not to a whole bunch of, and I'm very passionate about it, but not to a whole bunch of new positions that are created, not to Tweed Courthouse, that money is going to ensuring that our children have access to a high quality education, and our children who need the extra support get the extra support with after school programs, with tutoring programs, and other extracurricular activities so that they get a well-rounded education. I know that's a
So
lot.
no, it's right because education is like one of my biggest platforms that I want to embark on. And when it comes to education, I really want to focus on financial literacy, adding that as one of the curriculums to the DOE's curriculum system. I feel like a lot of kids are going into college, and they're going into, or a lot of kids aren't going to college that we're seeing. Um, Education has changed, and we have to sit back and realize it. Um, Getting the attention of our children within the classrooms has become a big challenge because what we're teaching, they're not really engaging into it and the way we're teaching. A lot of classrooms don't have smart boards. A lot of classrooms don't have computers and tablets. And these are the things that attract the young youth's mind and gets them more engaged with education. When we talk about financial literacy now, is we're trying to engage our kids to be more financially literate and know how money works.
Mhm.
Also with education, I think they need to also implement entrepreneurship programs and
Mhm.
trade programs within the schools, high
Yes.
schools, and higher education. Why I say that is I know a lot of people with degrees that are on the unemployment line, but I don't know a lot of people that know how to do a skill that can provide for their family. And that's what we're seeing in today's society. The biggest downfall of a person my age right now is student loan debt. So we're seeing a lot of kids right now not wanting to go to college because they don't want to get student loan debt. And why I'm bringing up all this, because I feel like this has to do with the money and how we're utilizing the money on the $30 billion, is because we have to kind of reorganize on how we're educating our kids and not focus on things that aren't going to be better them later on after they leave college. Not saying that everyone should not. We need doctors, we need lawyers, we need educators. But a lot of our kids don't want to do these things. A lot of our kids have brilliant ideas that they may want to
Mhm.
become entrepreneurs within high school. I went to an event the other day with a bunch of young black queens. They had to be between 18 and 21 years old, and they all had businesses, but none. Some of them didn't have LLCs. You know what I'm saying? They didn't know how to get an LLC. They didn't know how to open up an account, but they did know how to market themselves, and they did know how to sell product. So I feel like if we educate our kids at a younger age on how to do so, they'll be more financially well-being when they're older and now going inside society. Holding the DOE accountable is, I feel like each district and each school should know where the money is going for each school. Something that the police department does, what I think is a very dope idea, is they always give a year to
Mhm.
date and statistics. And I think we kind of need to do that for the DOE, where if my daughter goes to Baychester Academy on Boston Road, so if she goes to Baychester Academy now, I should know how much money Baychester Academy is getting for this fiscal year and what this money is utilized for. And I feel like if all parents could get that to them at the beginning of the school year, the middle of the school year, and the end of the school year, we could kind of dictate where we need to allocate more money to and what departments need some help. So I feel like that's the best way to hold them accountable. Having them come in, we could also have more town hall meetings. I know the chancellor did the town hall meeting in our district this year. It's hard for him because he has to go to all the boroughs around, but I feel like having more town hall meetings when we have parents
Mhm.
actually come out and state their issues and how they want to see their kids, because we're bringing our kids to school. We live with our kids. We know how we want our kids educated. We know where we want our kids to be. So we're seeing a displacement in the school, and we're seeing that the school is not receiving the resources that they need to make sure our kids get, you know, this education that they direly need to become successful when they grow up. Then we should have some say so. Stakeholders should have say so across the board. Every issue that we discussed today, stakeholders should have say so and should be able to hold these city agencies and elected officials like myself accountable when they want to see change happen. And in order to hold DOE accountable, we need to know where the money is going exactly. You can look it up. It is public, but a lot of people don't know how to do that. So I feel like
Yes.
if we provide that
Yes.
information for them at the beginning of the year, in the middle of the year, and at the end of the year to kind of show them where the money is going, then as a parent, I could come to the parent teacher conference, or I could come to the parent meetings and kind of discuss, listen, the money that's going here, I need that more. I need the money that's going into English, I need more into math, because you could see
Yes.
we went from 40% to 35% in a year with math.
Mm-hmm.
That means more money needs
Mm-hmm.
to go to math because English is going up higher. And we could kind of test with the statistics and see what goes on. And that should happen with each individual school, because each individual school has their own issues in that community that they have to deal with. They deal with different kind of kids within that community. Also, I
Mm-hmm.
believe that the principals need to have a lot of say so within the school, but they
Yes.
also need to discuss this with the parents. Well, I think they do a good job now, but becoming more transparent and accountable doesn't hurt to have a better
Mm-hmm.
relationship with our parents in our schools.
No, as a parent that's been through the school system, that's still going through the school system, you are 100% correct. And yes, a lot of the information about the budget is there. It's online, it's on the
Mhm.
school website, it's on the DOE website, but parents have to know where to look. And the parents do not know where to look. And this information should be given to the parents throughout the year, so that parents can see, okay, from our school budget, this is what we got from Title One. This is what's going to, extra support for students. This is what's going to pay for extra teachers to help students in those subjects. This is what, the
Some of our
stakeholders.
schools don't even have gyms. Some of our schools don't have gyms either. And that's a big issue
Yes.
also that I want to address in city council. Like that, it makes no sense. Like you can imagine being in
Hmm.
elementary school. I can imagine being in elementary school.
Yes.
We love recess
Yes.
was very
Was
important.
yes.
Very important,
No,
but a
it's
lot of our kids
true.
don't have gyms. So that's also an issue we need to bring to the DOE with the money, that we need to kind of making sure that school pride is something that it is not celebrated within our
Hmm.
schools to the magnitude where I believe it should be celebrated. Growing up, if you go watch shows like Saved by the Bell,
Yes.
Family Matters, you kind of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, you kind of
Hmm.
saw the school spirits at this school. I went
Hmm.
to Catholic school my majority of my life. My siblings went to public school, and my kids are going to public school. But one thing in Catholic school, which is probably the only thing I could say that they really push that I really took, was the pride of having school pride. And when we have school pride, I think that starts from every aspect of the school, and having the gym has a lot of
Hmm.
influence on having that school pride, because you could do a lot of pep rallies in the schools. You could kind of push that school, because when you have school pride, you want to make sure my school is the best school in the district. If I go to Sousa Academy, I want to make sure Sousa is the number one school in this district. The Sousa Eagles are the number one school. And you want to make
Hmm.
sure you have that within your district. And I feel like
Yes.
school pride and having gyms, and if we kind of install that within our schools individually,
Hmm.
we'll be better off educating our kids. We have to grab them. Our kids we're losing our kids because we're not grabbing them. We're thinking that the same way we're educating them is bringing
Hmm.
them to us and going to keep them in the right path. It's not. We have to teach them codes. We have phones now where we're doing apps. Like, teach our children
Yes.
how to make their own apps. You know what I mean? Teach them things that they'll be interested in, that you could grasp to them. That's why I do as an elected official. A lot of the times when people see me, they'll see me. I maybe won't be in a suit. I'll be as casual as possible, but I want you to feel like I am a human being. I am a regular
Hmm.
person like you.
Hmm.
So if
Hmm.
I'm going and reaching out to you, don't hold me at a certain plateau because I'm elected official. Let's be transparent with each other. And if we could continue to do that with our kids, our education system will be better.
No, indeed, indeed. Um, uh, continuing on with the COVID-19 pandemic, we're talking about how families need to get back to work, childcare. The COVID-19 pandemic has greatly impacted um, families throughout the city. And when it comes to the infection rate of of people in the city, the Bronx has had one of the highest infection rates, and a lot of people were out of work. A lot of people are struggling. A lot of people are having difficulty paying for rent, paying for the basics, not just a roof above their head, but food on their table. And my question to you is, um, you know, as a city council person, what steps would you take? What would you advocate for and push for in the city council, but also push and advocate for on the state level to support families dealing with um, evictions right now, since the courts are open again? Um, what what type of relief would you seek for your constituents?
So we're seeing right now that a lot of constituents are being displaced, or trying. Their landlords are trying to displace them due to this pandemic. A lot of people haven't been working. Um, this is why I strongly suggest on the city and state level, there are pandemic committees that are in place, that when we go through pandemics like this, there are resources that we can tap into to kind of make sure that nobody is going to be too affected by this pandemic and wouldn't be able to, supply for their family. Um, a big thing that's being pushed right now is to cancel the rent for the remainder of the year. I strongly agree with that. The only issue, there's no issue with that, but the only thing I would take is to the private owned landlords, because in our
Mhm.
district we have a lot of residential homeowners in our district.
Mhm.
I will also do cancel the mortgage for them, because they have to pay mortgage, and we have a lot of good landlords in our district that are trying to work with their tenants. My mother is a landlord. She's been a landlord for years, and she was like an amazing landlord that always tried to work with her tenants. She never took them to housing court once. Um, that's because you understand the difficulties that people. New York City is very expensive to live in. The cost of living is ridiculous. The lifestyle in New York City is ridiculous, and it costs a lot. Of the median income in New York City is very low. It's between fifty to about $60,000, if so. I think it's about around $50,000. So the cost of living in New York City is very high when the income is very low. So when it comes to the rent situation, I feel like we need to have resources in plan to kind of help our constituents who are going through this issue, and we need committees within the city council and the New York State legislature to have resources set aside to kind of compel our constituents from going through this issue that they're going right now with their landlords. When it comes to the big developers, the big landlords, you guys really have to help us out. It's ridiculous that you guys are really trying to kick people out their households. I'm a cyclist now. I started cycling since the pandemic happened. So I get to ride around the community and see what's going on, and kind of get to see. When you're driving, you're kind of driving, you're just in the
Mhm.
route. But when you're riding, you kind of get to look around. And the other day when I was riding, I seen a family in the train station sleeping. Like they were out of their home, and it was two kids and a mother and father, and I was completely heartbroken. And just to understand that somebody will put somebody in that position, that's very heartbreaking. You understand that people have to pay bills, but we are human. You have to be humane at the same time. So we have to have resources put into place. And these committees, I feel like if we have these committees like the pandemic committee, this will kind of compel and help us out with these resources to kind of make sure that our constituents don't go through this if this happens again, and to help those out who are going through this right now.
Indeed, indeed. Uh, and speaking of housing, um, every year their newspapers, different newspapers come out, and also the public advocate's office, they come out with these, the list of like the top 10, the top 10 worst landlords, the top 10 slumlords. And every time I see the list, I always say to myself, yeah, you're forgetting the number one slumlord, in my opinion. Okay. And that is NYCHA, the
Mm-hmm.
city. Okay. They are number one. This situation with NYCHA, I think I'm in District 12. We have a NYCHA development on Baychester, like
We have
across,
few. We have
yeah, we're
we have Edenwall,
Edenwald. Hmm.
Eastchester, Gun Hill, Boston Secor, and Baychester Housing has just converted into a RAD.
Oh, okay. I did not know that. That's interesting.
Mhm.
Um, this situation with NYCHA, every year it's the same thing. It's nothing new. In the winter, there's no heat, there's no hot water, or the elevators are broken, or it's mold, or I mean it's always something. The apartments are dilapidated. It takes forever to get anything fixed, renovations, and you know we're talking about some of our most high risk community members, senior citizens, and others. As a city council person, I know we all understand, NYCHA is funded by the federal government, but you know what? The city still also has its responsibilities when it comes to NYCHA. We cannot just absolve the city of its responsibilities. As a city council person, what would you do? What steps would you take? What do you see as possible solutions to these NYCHA problems to help and support NYCHA tenants?
So I believe a report came out that it will take $40 billion to fix NYCHA in New York City, and we don't have that money to do that. The federal government has been delaying to give that money, so we're not sure if we'll get it from them. One thing President Obama did in his administration is create the RAD program, which is the Rental Assistance Demonstration Program, which will kind of convert NYCHA property into private management. Um, it happened in our district with Baychester Housing. So far, so good. They're in love with it. And I believe by the end of 2028, the city plans on converting 62,000 units into private management RADs. Also, I think the city has another organization, their own kind of RAD. It's called the PACT, which is the Permanent Affordability Commitment
Mhm.
Together. So I believe that we're trying to change all the NYCHA developments to them. I'm gonna tell you something about NYCHA. When we have NYCHA developments that have an abundance of garbage in front, that
Mhm.
takes a while to get picked up. When we have NYCHA developments that have mold inside apartments, when we have NYCHA developments that are excruciating hot, it's just hot. I was walking through the hallway the other day in Gun Hill, and I was talking to the TA president. I was like, "Why is it so hot in here?" And he was like, "Yeah, Kevin, this is an issue. We're not treating our community members with any form of humanity. Um, it's not right, and then we're asking them to care about the development when we're not caring about it ourselves. I
Mhm.
drove by NYCHA the other day, and there's a bed in front of a development. It's been there for like a week. So it's when you're treating the projects like this, and this is how people are referring to it as the project. So we need to treat it so bad, and it's just the dirt in the bottom. That's not true. We have a lot of people that live in the projects and grew up in NYCHA developments that
Mhm.
turned into that really want their development to
Mhm.
be better. Really want to
Yes.
get back to development. My suggestion is the RAD program. I like it. I like the fact that, because if you drive, and you could take a look when you go to Baychester, if you look at it,
Mm-hmm.
it looks beautiful. It kind of resembles the Co-op City type of. Co-op City has a very beautiful scenery. Co-op City is a
Yes.
beautiful community, but it's not nature.
Mhm.
Um, Baychester housing in our community, it converted into that, and you could kind of see it's being beautified. I went into a unit, and the kitchen is being beautified, and the tenants there, they're really happy about it. The only issue now is being privatized. So when it's privatized, you don't, it's not really following under the same
Mm-hmm.
guidelines as much so as when it was federally owned.
Yes.
What I would suggest is that the RAD program should be monitored by city council, um, in order to not keep our constituents and community leaders at ease, that their rent won't be raised, they won't be
Mm-hmm.
evicted, and that they will be continue to be taken care of when a boiler issue happens, a roof
Mm-hmm.
issue happens, that these issues will be addressed immediately. And I feel like if we have a city council monitor the RAD program, that we could kind of have more control over what the federal government gives us here and how we can control the program. Um, that's for NYCHA. When it comes to other private buildings and with the other landlords, I believe it's legislation. I believe Carlina Rivera is on the in the council right now. She basically wants to say when a landlord is given too much violations, that the tenants are able to buy in on the property. And I think that will be very, very good. And one thing, I'm very big on generational health and wealth. So if you're able to buy in on a property and have ownership on it, especially if your landlord isn't doing their job, I think that should be into heavy consideration. And that will prompt, I'm pretty sure landlords don't want their property being bought from them. But if you're not doing the job and taking care of our constituents and the people that live in the property, why should people? I go into buildings, and
Mm-hmm.
I do something with Speaker Hasty called Operation Pull Up On Me, where we go to individuals and we ask them if they have any community issues. Like, we'll go to a random building, a random area, and we'll knock on the door and say, "Hey, I'm your district leader," and Speaker Hasty say, "I'm your
Mm-hmm.
assemblyman." We kind of ask any issues. And while we were doing this, we would see buildings now that the paint was old in the buildings. The buildings were kind of run down, and it's not no way to treat our people that live in these communities, and
Mm-hmm.
it's very disheartening. It's very disheartening. So I feel like if you are a part of that worst landlord list, you're gonna have a
Yes.
lot of trouble, because we're gonna push legislation now to give tenants a chance to buy in on the property and own that piece of that property themselves if you're not
Mm-hmm.
holding up to the standards that you're supposed to be holding up to. When it comes to NYCHA, I'm for the RAD program. I just think it needs to be city council monitored, so we can make sure that nothing will be pushed by the private management companies that will push our constituents out of the community.
Yes. That's interesting. I did not know that about Baychester housing. I'll definitely do a drive-by over there. So Kevin, you're very much into the youth, and it's hard to miss what's going on right now with Black Lives Matter, with the defund the police movement that's going on. And then I don't know if you saw recently the article that came out in the New York Times recently, where they interviewed um, uh, City Councilwoman Vanessa Gibson, Council Member Rob Cornegy from Brooklyn, and others, saying, "Okay, we understand that there are issues with law enforcement, with the police department. We see the disconnect, a serious disconnect. We also see, um, legislation now that's been introduced by Senator Kevin Parker in Brooklyn that's saying, okay, NYPD, New York Police Department officers should live in New York City within the 5 boroughs. Everybody is talking about police community relations. So what, as a city council member, or actually right now as a community member and as someone that deals with the youth, someone who is there, that's on the ground, what would you recommend? What do you see as the way forward to improve relationships between law enforcement, between the NYPD and the communities that they serve? Do you believe, because people have different interpretations of exactly what defund the police means, but as someone on the ground working with our youth, that's there in the community, what do you see as the way forward to improve police community relations, not just in District 12, but throughout the Bronx and throughout New York City?
That's a loaded question. I'm going to answer it like this. Growing up in neighborhoods, specifically neighborhoods of color, we're afraid. You tend to be afraid of the police officers, and I have a ton of experiences with police officers. The police precinct in my district, I've had positive experiences with them. Now working with them, but I've had a lot of negative experience with them. With the last imagery I've had of my father in my life was him inside my household, was him being incarcerated by the police officers. So it was already a bad relationship growing up of how my perception of police officers were. And it's something that I had to learn and kind of educate myself on policing in our community. What's happening now is we have a lot of police officers that are walking our streets that don't necessarily know the people in the community, and that's the biggest issue. And when I think they're talking about police officers that live outside New York City, it's because they don't understand our youth within New York City. So if you're a individual who lives in Long Island or Jersey, and you come in and you're trying to police a community in the Bronx, you're possibly not going to understand the youth in that area, and there's going to be some disconnection. When the disconnection comes in, there's going to be a lot of disrespect amongst each other. There's not going to be any respect. There's going to be a lot of violence. And it's just not going to be good for the community when it comes to public safety. When I think defund the police, and I think people need to realize what we're saying. Defund the police is not, and this is repetitive because I've seen it in plenty of interviews, and I'm not understanding why people aren't getting it. Defund the police does not mean that we're taking money away from the police because we just going to take the money away and we don't want them to do their job or things of that nature. There are other issues that happen within our community that we need resources for, like mental health. We need more resources for kids to participate in things, because like I said, an idle kid and an idle mind tends to do things that they're not supposed to be doing. So we need to take that money and kind of reinvest in other programs in our community, because I'll tell you one thing. When I was younger, I had a gun pointed to my face, and I'll tell you the scenario. I was walking down the street on 219th, walking towards White Plains Road, went to go hang out with my friends at the time, and we were walking to the barbershop to get a haircut. And when we were walking down the block, we bumped into a guy that we know around the area, saying hello to him. Wasn't there for more than 2 minutes tops. And we were unaware that he had a prior negative engagement with somebody, and that person came back to our block with 20 people, 20 dudes, and a big bag, and he pointed a gun so big at me, I thought he was selling me an Xbox. So being on the other side of a gun and the trauma that happens now, and I'm saying this because we're seeing a lot of gun violence happen now. A lot of our kids are being traumatized inside of a community that doesn't have resources. It is lacking any community centers, because we don't have a lot of community centers. It's like the North Bronx. I was just a part of bringing the YMCA to the North Bronx section. That's my baby. That's
Yes.
my biggest
Yes.
project
Yes.
that I'm bringing to the
Thank
community.
you.
And
Thank you.
no problem, no problem. But that's everyone in the community that had hands on to it. But it's the biggest project that I've been a part of, and I'm going to utilize this place as a hub to try to address any situation that we're having in the community, especially with our police officers.
Mhm.
We want our police officers to kind of be connected more with our constituents, and the trauma that we deal with as kids, because this happened to me when I was a younger kid. The trauma we deal with as kids kind of results to us acting out in violent ways moving
Yes.
forward in life. And without the proper resources like mental health resources, I'm very cautious about my mental health. Prior to the pandemic, I was going to therapy. And I think we look at therapy, and I was going to therapy because I was doing a lot of things where I felt like,
Mhm.
all right, I'm
Mhm.
doing this. Am I good enough?
Mhm.
Am I doing this right? Am I doing this right? And I
Mhm.
kind of just went to sit down, take a breath, and talk to somebody who has an outside perspective on my situation and doesn't have any,
Yeah.
he is not a friend or family member, just a professional that could speak to me about the situation. And we need more programs like that, because therapy is something that, and mental health is something that we shun before, but we are accepting it now, and more people are
Mhm.
becoming
Mhm.
accepted of their mental health. So, but we don't have enough resources for mental health. And when we want to
Mhm.
defund the police, a lot of the money the police receives, billions of dollars, we could take $1 billion and reinvest it in our communities, trying to give
Mhm.
constituents more programs to work. We could provide more OSHA 30 programs for our constituents who want to go
Yes.
into construction. We could
Yes.
provide more mental health programs for constituents who are dealing with traumatic situations. We deal with a lot of situations that go on in the community. Another thing we
Mhm.
need to do with our police officers is we need to expand the Build a Block program. They have a Build a Block program within our community. It's divided into 4 sectors, but our community is very big. We probably need to expand that and divide that into 8 sectors, where we could kind of,
Yes.
get it smaller and address certain situations immediately before they get blown out of hand. And I think the Build a Block organization was Build a Block program with NYPD is very good, because it gives you a chance
Mhm.
to kind of build with the police officers and the neighborhood community officers. I know the 47th precinct in my district, they do a pretty good job over here with the neighborhood police officers. But we could use we could use better. There's nothing wrong with becoming better and establishing a better relationship. And another thing, and the last part I want to put is, when I was growing up, the police department had the police athletic league. And when I
Yes.
was a kid growing up, I
Mhm.
was dying to play in that league. That
Mhm.
league covered basketball, it covered education. It was a direct connection with youth and the police. We need to
Yes.
bring that to every single precinct in New York City. All right. There are
Yes.
officers, and there's sometimes you'll see
Mhm.
officers not doing anything. At the
Mhm.
times during the day, these officers could be participating in the New York Police Athletic League. And if we incorporate that league into all our precincts alongside
Mhm.
with the Build a Block, alongside, they could get to know our constituents better. I'm not going
Yes.
to 100% say that all police officers need to be from New York City, because with for a safety issue amongst themselves. But I
Yes.
would strongly say a high percentage of police officers should come from New York City, especially police officers who are running the precincts. They should
Yes.
be from New York City, because they kind of
Mhm.
know the area and kind of know the kids that we are catering to in our community.
No, that is true. That is true. And yes, the PAL there, it needs to be in at every precinct needs to have that program. Um, so just to close, I have a one final question for you, and that is small businesses. Um, and District 12 has,
Tons.
has tons of small businesses. And with the COVID-19 pandemic, small businesses were impacted greatly. And a lot of the small businesses actually employ people from the community. And with with everything that's happening right now in District 12, have you? how has the pandemic impacted small businesses? Have you seen a large amounts of small businesses closing? I know Forbes recently had an article that that really gave out alarming numbers of small Black businesses that have closed due to the pandemic. But in District 12, have you, what has, how has the pandemic impacted small businesses? And as a city council person, what steps would you take? What would you advocate for to support these small businesses in our district that really, truly, indeed employ people from the community?
So what we saw happen is competition amongst small businesses failed because they weren't ready for the pandemic. And that happens because a lot of small businesses in our community have been around for years. They're mom and
Yes,
pop stores, and they've been operating at a specific way for years. Um,
yes,
Now being that we're in the modern days, I think it's very important that we add resources to Small Business Alliance to modernize a lot of those mom and pop businesses.
yes,
And when I say modernize is help them create websites,
yes,
apps, um,
yes.
the ways that they can still produce without being necessarily open or being available 24/7 for their consumers.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of businesses in our district, like I said, mom and pop stores, they've been around for 25 to 40
Yes.
years, and they don't really know how to market themselves to this generation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, a lot of their consumers are people who have been in the community for years, but haven't went out during the pandemic or really didn't want to, be around a lot of people. So what I would suggest for city council is to help all of our small business with marketing and help them modernize, with helping
Mm-hmm.
them guys, educate them on how to start a website, educate them on how to get an app. Because a lot of our consumers and constituents in the community are utilizing these apps. A lot of people shop on Amazon. Why? Amazon is very accessible, and you can shop from them and get their stuff quick. But we're in a time where more people want to support the small business owner. More people want to
Yes.
support the Black business owner. More people need to keep the dollar within the Black community.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I think with that being said, if we could kind of set up a program now where we could kind of help our small business modernize, where they will be able to market their business to a larger platform and still be able to make income in case a situation like this happens. And when we are okay, sometimes in a
Yeah.
small business, Amazon is open 24/7. So we need our mom and pop stores open 24/7. They probably won't physically be
Yes.
open 24/7, but if they have a website and
Right.
able to, they'll always be able to get income even when they're sleeping. So
Sleeping.
I think
Yeah.
that's one thing. Another thing is a lot this happened to a lot of businesses in our area that were opening during the pandemic. I have a business and it's a healthy restaurant, and I was so grateful for it because in our area we just have a whole bunch of fast food restaurants. It's like they just dump all the fast food restaurants in our area. So when we get a healthy restaurant and a juice bar that wants to open up in the area, I get excited
Mm-hmm.
because I'm a
Mm-hmm.
health freak. I'm really big into health. The Not 62 initiative, that the Bronx campaign that we pushed was pushing. That's a big initiative for me. So I have a restaurant that wanted to open up, but they weren't able to open up because of the pandemic, and they weren't able to apply for none of the loans because of the pandemic. So I think with the committee, with the pandemic committee that I'm stating that we should have, I think we should set aside to revitalize small businesses, address education, address mental health because a lot of people have been stuck in the house and they don't know how and
Yes.
it's causing people to act out. So
Mm-hmm.
I believe with the pandemic committee, we could kind of address all those situations within and kind of set aside the resources and the money allocations for those. So if this does happen again, we're able to help them out. But I really feel like small businesses, we should help them modernize. I was just in a small business the other day, and they were doing alterations, but when the pandemic happened, they started selling masks. So I have a website. I'm going to put the video out, but you can see me kind of talking to them, and like, you should do an Instagram page. A lot of people are on Instagram. You should do a Facebook page because people on Facebook, and Facebook allows you to market a specific area where you could kind of showcase, I have these masks. Because I remember when this pandemic happened, a lot of people couldn't find masks, and I myself was trying to find custom masks, and I didn't know anywhere to go, and I went on Instagram, and that's where I was looking. But if there was an area in my community, I would have went to that area opposed to me going outside my community. And you're seeing more of that now. You're seeing more Black people want to support Black-owned businesses, and it's at a time, if we're going to do that, we have to make sure that we're supporting our businesses and making sure that they have the resources to supply to the consumers.
No, I mean, I think that you're absolutely right. That's a great idea with helping to modernize the small businesses in the community, because your website is your business card, and your website will work for you 24/7. But they need support, they need assistance, they need guidance on this, so that they can be educated on how best to market their business. Is this something that you see perhaps the local community board or the business improvement district could work together with, say, for example, the city council committee in getting this done, since the community boards and the district managers, they're on the ground in these communities?
Yes, I think it's very vital that all stakeholders have a say-so in this conversation, and try to figure out this plan to kind of help the small businesses out. Also, with doing that, so we also need to put programs in place to kind of help our seniors who weren't tech savvy during this time, who weren't able to go online or didn't know how to go online. So we have to be we have to fund senior programs to kind of help them modernize themselves and kind of help them during this pandemic. A lot of seniors don't have email addresses. A lot of seniors don't have tablets or know how to operate a tablet or the internet. So we want to make sure we have programs to kind of help that out. That's why I think I'm going to start doing a pop-up where I'm helping seniors when the pandemic's over and people are more safe, where I'm helping seniors start a email account and kind of teaching them how to utilize, technology. I think that's very imperative, because we could do this with the small business owners, but like I said, a lot of their consumers are people who live in the community, who are seniors, who aren't really tech savvy themselves. So I think with this pandemic, and I'm not trying to shove or force anybody to become tech savvy, but with this pandemic, we could kind of see why it's kind of needed. And if we're in a better place, if we're ready, like a great saying is by my brother Sean Francois from Local 372 DC 37, you gotta stay ready. So we want to make sure that our seniors are staying ready in case something like this does happen again. So if we could create these platforms and programs to kind of get them modernized, and I believe everybody, in a sense, we want to make sure that we're modernizing a lot of things moving forward, with education, with small businesses, with a lot of things that we shouldn't. We realize this situation has forced us to kind of want to modernize the way we think and the way we're operating. So I definitely agree that community boards and the small business alliances should be a part of this, because they are stakeholders. And I'm going to continue to say this: if you're a stakeholder in anything pushed by the government, pushed by city council or New York State or anywhere, Congress, you should have a say-so in what is being implemented in your community. That's the only way we're going to have transparency. That's the only way we're going to bridge the gap between elected officials and constituents. We want to make sure that our constituents have a say-so, and that's the platform I'm running on. Many of the great ideas I get are from constituents in our community, so we want to make sure that we are continuing to push that initiative moving forward.
Oh, I agree with you. I think that more of us need to hold governments accountable on every level. So I 100% agree with you on that. So Kevin, what your closing remarks to the constituents of District 12, to the residents of District 12, what would you like to leave them with?
First and foremost, I want to thank the residents of District 12 for raising me, for believing in me. I would not be here if it wasn't for you all. The inspiration, the guidance that you have gave me throughout my years, especially my 20s, which are very pivotal years in especially a Black man's life. Thank you for guiding me. I want to run and represent you because I feel like I owe you guys so much, and I want to give back to my community, and I want to push the agenda of generational health and wealth. I want to make sure that we're pushing this agenda to actually make sure that our children have a place in the society and they understand how to maneuver in the society. Um, I want to be transparent. I want to be held accountable as elected official. That's why many of you have my personal cell phone number, and I'll continue to give it out. Um, but I want to be transparent. I want to be open. I want you guys to understand that I am representing you. I work for you. I will be pushing legislation and pushing initiatives from my community. I'll be very open, and I want to have an open door as an elected official. Um, Hopefully, I've been doing that as a district leader now. Hopefully, I've been doing that as a community relations director for Speaker Hasty. Hopefully, I've been doing that with the many hats that I've wear now. I hope that I've been doing a decent job, but I do want to take it to another level where I do have some form of notoriety, where I can represent my community and push initiatives that are coming from people in my community, and it's being heard. So I would like to thank everyone from District 12. Like I said, you guys raised me. I would not be here if it wasn't for you. I've been in that district my entire life, and I plan on being in that district my entire life alongside with my family. And I want to represent you. And Rally for the Bronx is our organization. It's not my campaign, it's our campaign. And I thank you for this opportunity, Ms. Davis, and we'll Rally for the Bronx 2021.
Yes, indeed, indeed. Well, thank you so very much for joining us today at Little Africa Bronx News. We will have your contact information, your website, and your social media information at the close of this interview so that our viewers can see it and our viewers can get in contact with you. Thank you
One
so
more,
much.
one more thing.
Mhm.
One more thing, if I can mention, something I will be doing new is I'm starting a YouTube channel. Um, I want individuals to see how the political system works and how local politics works and the importance of it. And a lot visual content is what's really pushing the initiative these days. Just like this, a
Yes.
lot of people want to hear and see their,
Mhm.
candidates. So I will be starting a YouTube page on Rally for the Bronx where you could kind of see what I do on a day-to-day basis. It will not only be stuff about politics. I will have some regular stuff in there with me and my daughters, so you can kind of see my character. Also my engagement with people in the community. It's something I'm starting new now. I want to do it throughout the duration of my tenure in politics, to have a more and that will push my transparency and accountability agenda, where you'll see exactly what I'm doing. Moving forward. So that's something I just want to put out there. Sorry if I interrupted.
Oh, no, no, not at all. Not at all. No, that is fantastic. And when you launch the YouTube channel, please let us know.
It's up. It's up
Um,
now. It's up
oh, it's
now.
up now? Okay, so
Yeah.
great. So I will get that information from you so that it's included in, the closing slide with your contact information and your social media information. And just full disclosure, I am one of your constituents. I do live in Co-op City. So I
Okay.
too will be closely watching this race. And I am very, very much interested in the programs that you have for the youth, because I have a 12-year-old. And I also want to say, as a mom of a 12-year-old, I am so happy about the YMCA coming up, to the area. So thank you for all that you're doing for
No
our young
problem.
people.
We have a
And
basketball clinic on Saturday if you want to bring your child.
oh, okay. So we have to
Yeah,
follow up on that. Yes,
yeah,
absolutely, absolutely.
mm,
Thank you so
no
much for
problem.
that.
And make
Um,
sure everyone does the census and make sure we participate in the census because we lose $2,500 for each individual in our community that does not participate in the census. So please participate in the census. The end date is September 30th. So please get counted.
yes, yes, no, I know, absolutely, absolutely. And I will say one thing. Looking at the numbers for the census, being up here in Co-op City, Co-op City has had a pretty good response rate,
Mm.
but we definitely can do better for District 12 and for all of the Bronx and for all of New York City. So yes, I do encourage absolutely everyone to please, please, please complete the census. But Kevin Riley, Mr. Riley, thank you so very much for joining us today. It was an
Thank you.
absolute pleasure, and looking forward to seeing you out on the campaign trail and probably at the basketball program. Thank you
Thank,
so very much for joining us today.
thank you, Ms. Davids.